Hello, so welcome to this 1 hour conversation as part of our Adapting for an Uncertain Future series, as hosted by Heart Community Group. And today we're delighted to be speaking with Ruth Allen of Climate Emergency Centres UK, and also Ben. Ben is from Zero Carbon Guildford, I understand. We will put the website for the Climate Emergency Centres up in the chat in a moment. But thank you so much for coming, Ruth and Ben. Great stuff.
Thanks for having us.
We're very, very grateful. So we want to dive straight in, and I'm going to be asking you a little bit later to perhaps speak to your journey, like how you got here and why you do what you do. But first of all, let's start with a very, I suppose, fundamental question. What is a climate emergency centre? Perhaps to you, Ruth.
I think Ben's disappeared, actually. He was here and then I don't know if something's gone wrong with his link. Hopefully he'll be back on. What is a climate emergency centre? It's a space for communities to come together. And it's sort of seen as a bit of a kind of mothership, I guess, in that it's a space where everybody can bring what it is that they want to bring or that they think is useful or helpful for the community. And so you can have a lot of different groups doing a lot of different things, but all doing it in the same space. So you get that sort of cross-fertilization and cross-pollination of, different ideas and new things coming out of that. So that's the idea. And just new relationships being built and new understandings. There are, if you look on the website, there are sort of 3 things. We try to kind of distill it all down to sort of 3 principles around what a CEC is. So the first one is that it has solutions focus. So it's not about going, oh, there's a problem, but it's like, we know there's a problem. What's the solutions? What are we doing now? And also it's for people and planet. So we have a very good understanding that the social crises, and there are many that we are facing currently, are very much the same, come from the same source as the climate crises. And so when we look for solutions, we need to look for solutions that are looking after or meeting both of those needs, because that's when we're finding the real ways forward, the ones that are going to be helpful and more sustainable in the long term. The second one is that it's local and inclusive, so it's about bringing everybody together and really reaching out to all different aspects of your local community, everybody coming in and welcoming all of those parts. And it being about that sort of, what do we need locally? What do we need in our community to become resilient, to be more healthy, to be stronger, to be more sustainable? And you need the whole community involved in order to really get that answer. And the third one is that it's a network. And so so it's all about, you have all these localized spaces that are looking at their local communities, but there are lots of things that can then be shared around the network. So if something really works in one community and somebody goes, oh my God, that's just what we need over here, you get that happening much quicker, so that any solutions or anything that works, it gets shared, it gets put out there much quicker, because it's going around the country and through a network. So that's the idea. Yeah. Ben, did you want to? Ben, hello. Hello. We were just asked what a climate emergency centre is. So what's your view as someone who's running it?
Morning. Yeah, apologies for being late there. I'm actually getting a thing coming up right now, so my internet connection is unstable, so we just had to reset. So I might turn my video off if it's still really bad, but apologies for that. I think you summarised it pretty well there, Ruth. The reason that we were keen here in Guildford to get involved was to start moving on from just making a lot of noise about the situation we're in to actually finding ways to move forward, and trying to paint a bit of a positive story for people, and by being able to provide some of those solutions that help people tackle their waste consumption, then you can start having a lot more effective communication with a lot of people without necessarily having to say some of the words in the messaging that turn off big parts of society. So yeah, I think you summarised it there. For us, it was really about putting solutions right in front of people and trying to build this collaborative way forward.
Yeah, fantastic. So how long have they been going?
Well, Ben came on really early, actually. He was right at the beginning, but then I know Ben. They got started very early, the Guildford group, but we started a couple of years ago now. We first, I'm just trying to think, it was around March, it was around Beltane, so it was March 2020, I think, when we first sort of did a presentation to a large group of people about this idea and the handbook and the sort of, this is what you can do, let's build solutions. And I think Ben was at that meeting, so yeah, and then he's picked it up straight away and built an incredible team, an incredible space. You should go visit. Lots of people go visit.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. And I know that just to refer people, and this, you can get this off of the CG website, fantastic handbook, just kind of taking your hand and walking you through step by step how to set one up and kind of the pitfalls to avoid. And it's a really useful document. So I'd recommend everybody looking at that.
And the handbook, so it's the idea is, and we do need to update it because it's been a couple of years, we've just been so busy. The idea is that it's an evolving handbook, so that it sort of will grow and develop as more groups have ideas, learn things, get new knowledge, build resources. Those things go into that handbook, so it becomes a handbook, a network built handbook over time. There is also, so in line with that, Zero Carbon Guildford got a blog on their website, and they've written what they did to get theirs together, and that's almost like an up-to-date. It's kind of got a really nice little think about this, do this was really helpful.
Right. Brilliant. Yeah. Ben, I wonder, would you be so good as to put the Zero Carbon Guildford website in the chat? That'd be helpful. Thank you. Brilliant.
Can anybody hear me? Because my mic wasn't working earlier. Hello. Great. My mic is working even though I don't have a camera today.
All right. Could you keep muted for the time being, though, Marilla? Thank you. Good to hear you, at least, if not to see you. Brilliant. So I'd love to explore just a little bit about each of your journeys to this, like how you came to be here and why you're so passionate about climate emergency centres as a solutions focused, networking, all the things that you mentioned. How did you get here and why are you so passionate about them? Ruth?
How did I get here? I work, well, I'm a mum and I work in a sort of child protection area, and I work in this sort of social justice type stuff. And so most of my work has been around, my life has been around that. What do children need? How do we make the world a fair and just and, healthy place? Sorry, I can hear my dog kind of going in the background there. It's making funny noises. I don't know if you can hear him. And I became aware. I don't think I always assumed that the environment would get fixed. When I remember when I was at school and they first kind of brought it up and it became a thing. And the Green Party started, I think, back at that sometime in the 80s. I don't know. I just assumed that nobody was suicidal and the governments would fix it. And it wasn't until probably nearly a decade ago now, actually, 7 years, something like that. I read a Naomi Klein book, and then I started looking into the research, and then I became horribly aware of just how serious it was and how much things weren't happening, and how much the work that I've been doing was very much dealing with those same problems that were causing this planetary decline and catastrophe. And I had a huge emotional experience of that. And it was this weird thing where, you try talking to people and you sort of feel like there's this tumbleweed every time you raise the subject. This tumbleweed, or people didn't feel able to just talk about it. And I felt quite alone with it. And then XR popped up in 2018, and I read their 10 principles, and a lot of it resonated with me, and I felt like it was a good way forward. It was what was needed. And so I became involved with XR, and I was the Southeast coordinator, regional coordinator. And that's how I met Ben, because he was running the Guildford side of things. And so I was on the streets in April 2019. And it was an incredible experience, though very, very emotionally exhausting, but also uplifting. And then we got the climate emergency declared by Parliament, and all of these things happened. And there was certainly a sense that there was an acknowledgement or an acceptance that we were an emergency, but then nothing seemed to be happening. And it suddenly became aware that people were actually frozen, not because they didn't understand that there was a problem, but they just didn't know how to deal. And we felt so alone. And we needed to not feel alone anymore, because when we're together, we feel more able to do things. We're more able to act. We feel stronger. And so we needed to kind of start coming together, and that's kind of embedded in the Climate Emergency Centre idea. And I was Phoenix, who was involved as well. He and I kind of set it up together. He's been setting up spaces for many years, different climate spaces, and he had all of this knowledge, and he wanted to put it into a handbook. And we sort of thought, well, let's turn the handbook into this place, something that we can share, and also start connecting people up. And and it's kind of been very much then group led. So from that point of just putting it out, has become very organic, and it's just, groups will say, oh, we need this, or what's going on here, or they start sharing things, and we can see, oh, people want this, or this will be helpful, and it's just become like, we're just supporting basically teams. Yeah. That's all we're doing.
Yeah, fantastic. Ben, just from your point of view, why are you so passionate about what you're doing? Why are you doing what you're doing?
So I was working, my previous job was selling something to industry that was supposed to make like industrial machinery a lot more efficient. Which is why I quite enjoyed it and started getting involved with it, because in my mind, I was like, why wouldn't anybody want to do this? Because it's like obviously saving lubricant, it's increasing energy efficiency, saves you money. And it got extremely frustrating because it all just effectively boiled down to cash, basically. And at the same time, I was having to fly quite a bit. So I did geography at Royal Holloway quite a long time ago now. So I've always been pretty sort of climate focused, and I was, I suppose about 2015, 2016 was getting a bit concerned in the fact that I was having to fly way more often than I would have liked. So I was like, right, well, I need to really look at other areas where I can cut my footprint, basically. And actually I ended up quitting the job, partly because of that, partly because it was so frustrating, feeling like banging your head against the wall when the messaging was not what was resonating at all. So I sort of went through that and then went back to doing what I was doing before that. And then sort of I'd been looking for, when we moved over this way, I'd been looking for something to get involved in environmental stuff, like just volunteering for ages. And I was finding it extremely difficult to actually find a way to really do anything that I felt was quite meaningful. And then, I met Ruth through XR. And then after, I think, some time ago, I started feeling that it would sort of run its course, in that it had done a really good job in raising awareness, I thought, and that it was losing a bit of the strategy wasn't really working for bringing more people on. And I thought a big part of that was around messaging. A big part of that was a lack of solutions focus. And I can totally understand the need to keep messaging pretty clear and simple, but at the same time, you've got to paint a bit of a story for people to buy into. And I think I didn't really feel like that was happening, and I was looking for a way to try and, I suppose, reach out past what was messaging that really wasn't like it's. There's a lot of good stuff coming out of climate outreach at the moment. If you look into some of that about what messaging just doesn't resonate with a huge proportion of people, because we're all in such a little bubble that we think, oh well, this gets me. I can completely understand this messaging, so I don't understand why it's not working on anybody else. But when you break it down, it starts becoming quite obvious, really. And so that was a big sort of factor of thinking about, well, how do you reach out past this little bubble that we're stuck in? And it's a tricky one, because obviously everyone's got a bit of, I think all groups have a bit of a pipe dream of having some sort of presence in a town centre where people can just walk into, which has always seemed pretty unachievable. And then Ruth called me up and was like, oh, there's this business model that you can use to get spaces to do pretty much whatever you want within the realms of the law, obviously. So I was like, oh, this actually really is quite interesting. So I sat down with a few people that I knew were pretty active in climate and environmental stuff locally. And I think obviously everybody knows the sort of typical way environmental groups go. So you get loads of people come to a meeting and then a few people go away and do quite a lot of the work, and it ends up really breaking them. And I think, like, I can see people grinning. I know that everybody knows that's exactly the way most of it happens. So what was great and what really energized a lot of what we would do. So I'm on a really rickety table here, so that's why I'm moving up and down all the time. What was really energizing about it was that all the people who got involved with this were the active people from their groups. So it meant that rather than having 6 or 7 people doing everything, we had a group of people where everybody was really doing quite a lot, and so it really sort of energized the project to move it along. So it was like, I think it was probably March, April when we chatted about it, and then I started having conversations at the start of lockdown because I was bored. I figured everybody else who was quite active was quite bored, so I had a lot of one-on-one conversations with people to say, look, here's something we could do. So although we got involved at that time, starting things off the ground, we actually didn't get a building until, well, we got the keys in September 2021. So it actually took us about 14 months to go from the first conversation to getting a building.
Great.
Yeah, so that's...
thank you so much.
In a nutshell.
And what kind of things, and I guess each one is different depending on local preferences and passions and so on. What kind of things go on at your one, Ben?
Shall I give you a little tour?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so behind me, we've got a biodiversity. So we divided up into sections basically. So this is the biodiversity section. So we've got a big. So I'm struggling to angle this right. Got a big 5 metre by 2 metre map of the borough, which was donated by Surrey Wildlife Trust to try and help support the 30 by 30 campaign to protect 30% of land by 2030, and then there's a key on that which we're trying to grow out. So off the key is all the projects that are on the map, which is lots of local environmental biodiversity projects. We've got a community garden here and some of the community club together to buy a piece of land to protect it from development. So they're still trying to figure out what happens with that. We've got down here, although we've moved the kids section for the holidays, so they weren't running around at the top, but that's the Green Your Home zone, but now complete with children's area as well. Because it's just easier to have the kids down there basically. So down there we have we just got 10 grand funding from National Lottery, so that's partly going to go towards redoing some of that, because again, with all volunteers, we've sort of got up to the point where we were open, and then we really hit capacity because we've had 2 COVID bouts here, which has really just led to us treading water for quite a good sort of, I suppose, 4 to 6 weeks of the time we've been open since the end of November. So we're about to redo that, but that's going to have a pathway to improving your house with we've got a heat camera now, an imaging camera, and some smart meters, which we can loan out to people. So as a first step we're going to have I'm about to make some little stepping stones. So for each one, you move from the cheapest through to the up to heat pumps basically. So even and for different sort of style housing, we've got lots of different housing stock, as every area does. So to try and break it down into what your house is and how you go about making some of those steps. And then we've got a little heat pump in the corner down there, if you can see that green box there. Solar panel, EV charger, which was donated by company. And then in that corner is activism corner, which is ironically the least active part of the building. Some people are redoing that at the moment. And then this is our wall of heroes here, if you can see that. So that is, I'm really struggling with this reverse view. There you go, you can see there's a lot of people on that. So we launched a crowdfunder. We were really trying to be quite strategic with when we started recruiting volunteers and when we launched our crowdfunder, because obviously if you start getting people get really excited to get involved, and if you get them involved without anything for them to really sink their teeth into, they just disengage straight away. So we waited what felt like painfully long to get people involved, and then launched the crowdfunder and the volunteering platform at the same time. And we set a target of 10 grand for the crowdfunder, and we got 10 grand match funding. And because we're a charity, that basically turned into 25 grand, and we hit that in 3 weeks. So we were like really bowled over with the level of support that we got from that. And this is staggered. So the kids area is down 3 steps, if you can tell that from that. And then I was sat on the middle level where the biodiversity wall is. So I'm just going up to the top now. So there, we've got a stage there, if you can see the stage.
Oh, yeah.
So I made that out of reclaimed pallets. So everything in here is donated or reclaimed wood. That's our cafe, if you can see our cafe there.
Ah, okay. And all staffed by volunteers, the cafe, presumably.
Yeah, we've got no paid staff at the moment. We're entirely volunteer-led. So the cafe was kitchen units that I had left over from some jobs, and then all that was donated by Howdens. So if you're looking at getting something off the ground, Howdens is a good place to start. Ex-demo kitchens, things like that. We bought a sort of home-use coffee machine, which has taken a real beating. It does about 20 times as much in a day as it's supposed to do, but it's still hanging in there at the moment. And then we've got Zero Waste Shop here.
Oh, brilliant.
There's Mark, who keeps the place open a lot of the days of the week, and Kaz is sat down at that table, who's one of our custodians. So Zero Waste Shop there, which sells lots of different things, including vegan pick and mix.
Is that a refill?
Yeah, refill shop. Yeah, vegan pick and mix, detergents, oil, maple syrup, lots of things. We think we got about 60 products on it now. There's Lego Rebellion, which, if any of you know, Woody from XR Arts Group, he made all of that. He spent a lot of time and money doing that. And then we've got a hanging whale. They're made out of plastic, which was made by St. Cat's Art Club. We got 2 vertical farming towers, if you can see that. So urban agriculture is something that we use as a bit of a hook to discuss food security, because obviously that's quite a tangible problem to a lot of people now that we've had a lot of empty shelves. Got a try before you buy electric cargo bike scheme that we teamed up with the electric bike shop locally. And then this part over here is community fridge. So we got funding from that for that from Co-op via Hubbub. So they fund quite a few community fridges, and obviously food waste is a massive issue. It's 8 to 10% of man-made emissions, and it's completely avoidable, basically. So in March, we saved 655 kilos of food from landfill with that. So pretty decent amounts, and that's like our second full month, basically. But obviously, along with that, what we're trying to do is note down what's getting wasted of each thing, so that we can build campaigns out of it, because especially with veg, a lot of the reason it's getting wasted, it's all in massive packs with plastic. So people with 1, 2, 3 people in their household are buying it, they can't get through it all. And then this is our interactive wall here based on the jump. So if anybody knows the jump, it came out of research at C40, the climate policy writing organisation, which broke. A guy called Tom spent a year doing a load of research on how much impact communities could have right now without government intervention if they took sort of collaborative action. And it turns out it's actually about 30% of an area's emissions. So we really like this because it's quite empowering. And it's a much better messaging than the usual doom and gloom. So obviously it's a good way to frame things with looking at sort of success stories to say, look, this is really difficult, but we can do this with collaboration, and here's how much impact we can make. And so he broke it down into 6 areas, and he was so inspired by this, he actually left C40 and started The Jump, which is a charity now. We had the official launch of the charity here at the start of March. And in each of these, so you can see here, for example, this is just plywood surrounded by my neighbour's floorboards, which I pinched out their skip when they had their floor done. On the back of this, don't ask me how this works, but on the back of this, there's this magic magnetic paint, which gets wired up to stuff. So now when you touch the plywood, it's like a massive touchscreen TV, and it takes you through to some of the solutions for that what they call shifts. So what we were trying to do with that is that, I'm going to go and sit back down because I'm walking around quite loudly in front of all the people sat around. We really liked that. We liked the messaging of it, but it's with a lot of those things like carbon footprint calculators or those things, it typically tells you what you're doing wrong, but it doesn't really give you a clear idea of how to do stuff right. So we took that and we built a load of local solutions into it. So for the Eat Green one that I just touched, you have like, it tells you when the vegan markets are, it tells you where the cafes are that have low impact locally. And then there's another floor upstairs, which I won't bore you with, but we use that as flexible exhibition space. So we do climate cinema up there. We had Surrey County Council come and present the climate change delivery plan last week. So yeah, various things that go out there. We've got an art exhibition up there, climate themed art exhibition in May. So yeah, lots of different stuff really.
That's fantastic, Ben. Thank you so much. That's so inspiring. And what was the building before?
It was a new look, and it was empty for 3 years. Yeah. So, and I don't think anyone. We get so many people coming in saying, "Oh, this is so much better than it was when it was new look," and then immediately going, "Oh my God, when are you gonna have to leave?" sort of thing. Because I think like we've got enough shops that do nothing for most people. So actually, when people come in here, it's like a bit of an eye opener as to what you can do in the face of the retail sector completely changing. And actually we've got a venue here called the Boiler Room in Guildford, which is like an independent music venue. And they've just taken over a building that we looked at actually, which is council owned. And they've now started a community-led art gallery over there. So we've actually got 2 community-led spaces in Guildford now, which is pretty cool. So yeah, there was a pop-up shop in here for a bit as well, but they didn't pay their rent, so they got frog marched out. So we're hoping, because there's another floor above the flexible exhibition space, which I use as a workshop and a storeroom. It's so big that we hope that with retail the way it is at the moment, hopefully no one will be able to take it over. But yeah, we're crossing our fingers. We always knew it would be a risk that we'd have to leave at some point. So we got a 2-year meanwhile lease with and we're in the break clause period now, so we could get served notice. But we've had no indication anybody wants to take it. So we just have to cross that bridge when we come to it, really.
Yeah, fantastic. Ben, this is brilliant. And it's so nice to actually, visually see it, because, I've certainly been doing lots of reading up about it and looking at some videos, but it's so lovely to see it's actually there and it's working and people are engaging with it. Fantastic.
Because it's my nearest CEC, so I pop in from time to time. And it is that jump wall. It's really, if you just don't know, like, how do I do this? Where can I go to get nice, good vegan or veggie food? Where do I go to get, how do I do this? Where's the good secondhand clothes shops and things like that? It's all there. So instead of, you get these kind of conceptual things, but you just don't know how to action it in your local area. That's there for you. It's all done for you when you go in. So it's really useful. And also they run a kilo sale upstairs sometimes once a month, which I took my teenage daughter to, so it's a really good way of getting kids involved as well, because they love all that sort of, a kilo sale is like old secondhand clothes.
Right. Fantastic. Brilliant. Well, I want to kind of open it up now to questions from our group here. Kate, I know you have some questions, and then the rest of you be thinking about something that you're curious about. And because I can't see everybody, maybe just come in and ask your question. But let's start with you, Kate.
Cool. Okay. I'm leaving about 12:30 probably.
Ben's just answered a question I had there about whether the zero waste shop was for profit or not inside the centre, but it's all not for profit, so that's cool. So really to understand what's sort of the average number of volunteers and sort of volunteer time per volunteer used, and those kind of resourcing issues.
So to quickly address the shop, so all the profits go back into the charity, and actually we've got between the shop, the cafe, and a couple of events that we run, including the kilo sale, we're now pretty much self-sustaining, which is way quicker than we expected to be. And we still give free, we let people use the space for free if they align with our charitable objectives, unless they're making money. So the kilo sale aligns with our charitable objectives of cutting fast fashion, impact from fast fashion, but they charge for the clothes, so we charge them. So you can, it's a bit of a tricky one, because if you set something up on a business rates model, you have to be using wholly or mainly the space for the charitable objectives. So we actually wanted to get a local zero waste shop from a couple of towns over to come and set up and save us the hassle, but it was a real grey area, and there's not great advice from our council on this. So if you've got good links into that department of your council, you'll probably have a way better time figuring out whether you can do that with a company who would just be ready to go, basically. But we didn't, so we had to do it ourselves. So that's the thing to consider. And it's not, when it says wholly or mainly, that doesn't just mean floor space, it means what your takings are as well, which likely means that that's going to be the main part. Is if it's for profit, could put you in a bit of a risky situation there. We've got something like 500 volunteers registered, never seen 350 of those at least. So we have about 120 accepted volunteers now who have spoken to our volunteer manager, and I would say a core of 40 to 50 who are pretty committed and regularly doing stuff. So the way we keep the space open is we have custodians. So on each day, there's at least one custodian in, ideally two, and they're the people who open the doors, turn on the lights. We've got no light switches in here because it was a big new look. They had a BMS, a business management system, and when they left, they ripped out all the computers. So we have to turn everything on at the consumer unit, which is extremely annoying. So we've got an extremely complicated opening process of all different color-coded stickers. So a volunteer can't just come in and figure out what's going on. They actually make it so much worse. It takes you like half a day to figure out how to get all the power back on if you let anyone on it. And then we have volunteers throughout the day. So some days are quieter than others. Some days we have really good teams who stick around and do all the cleaning as well. But we do shifts 10 till 1 and then 1 till 4, and we close at 4 because we feel it's unfair that if we close at 5, volunteers are then sticking around to do the cleaning as well. But a lot of the days we will have, so we usually have about 3 events in the evening per week. So typically, if we have an event in the evening, some of us will likely hang around, we'll stay open till 5, and then we just hang out and do a bit of admin or what have you between 5 and 6:30 or whenever we open. But then we also obviously have people behind the scenes doing quite a lot of volunteering as well. So we've now restructured. So we have a governance circle, which is the trustees of the charity, which is now 12 people, an operations circle who make all the decisions on the ground so that they get less sort of annoyance, I suppose, from trustees who are saying, what about this, what about that, when they don't actually know what the situation is on the ground, to give them some autonomy and, you know, make them feel valued. And then we have projects that go on, like vertical farming, TerraCycle, and just of note, I didn't show you TerraCycle, it's in Green Your Home at the moment, but that is one of the most popular things about the centre because people love recycling. And although, you know, it's not exactly going to solve the climate crisis, it is quite a good hook to get people on the fringes, you know, the movable middle that you might call them, involved in some stuff. So that's how we run volunteers. And a really important note is that every area has a third sector support charity whose job it is to help charities and CICs get off the ground. They're often called voluntary action, whatever the name of your area is. Ours is voluntary action Southwest Surrey, but they are there to help support you guys do what you want. So they can help with policies, they can help you register as a charity or a CIC, but importantly, they pay centrally for access to volunteering software, and there's quite a few different types. They're not all as good as each other, but they will give you access to that, so you can then have an easy piece of software to use to manage your volunteering. We got extremely lucky in that the person who used to head up Voluntary Action Southwest Surrey, who's like the oracle on all things volunteering, retired in the summer and came straight on board with us to be our volunteer manager. So we really landed on our feet there. But yeah, I think it's a good example. If you're building something quite exciting and getting a lot of momentum, then lots of really useful people get involved, I think, to be part of it. So
yeah, excellent. Kate, did you have anything else?
Yeah, another one is another 2 most popular activities. You've already said about the TerraCycle and the Kilo, the fast fashion one, but also how do you measure your outcomes? Do you feel like you're making a difference?
Yeah, so really difficult. And I've just been having this conversation with somebody this morning. So our most popular event is the Kilo sale, definitely. The TerraCycle is probably the most popular project, as in terms of interaction, or maybe the community fridge is not far behind. The most popular topic of conversation is impartial energy advice. That's a really good one. And what I would also note is that the community energy groups, so for us it's Community Energy South, but all a part of Community Energy England, they're doing some great stuff at the moment. What's happened is there's lots of different community energy groups springing up everywhere, and they're all asking the ones that are established for advice. So what they've done is basically built an alliance out of this so that they now actually advise people. And in our area, there's a person called Nicola. Her history's in fundraising, but she's also the co-director of an energy co-op. So they've got lots of these people that they've put in with great experience. They've got two focuses. One is powering up, so it's like generation projects, and the other is powering down, so saving fuel costs and all that side of things. They'd be a really great organisation to reach out to, because they're also looking to mentor 10 groups in each county to help them get projects off the ground. So the whole thing on impartial energy advice, that is, if you were looking to get a space, or even just do something where you didn't have to have a space straight away, you can do some of this online with interactive houses or what have you. They'd be a great group to speak to try and get advice. They're like adding someone really knowledgeable straight into your team effectively. Sorry, I've rambled too much. What was the second part of the question, Kate?
Oh no, how do you measure your outcomes? Yeah.
So some of it's really straightforward, right? So the community fridge, we weigh what comes in by category and then what goes back to the bin afterwards. So we've actually only wasted about 45 kilos of food that's come into the community fridge out of, I don't know, maybe like close to a ton. March was definitely our biggest month, but we started early February, so I think it's about a ton. So that's only been about 45 kilos out of a ton, which is pretty good. So that's really easy to measure because something's coming in and going out. Same with TerraCycle, because people bring stuff in, we sort it all out into the thing, we weigh it, and then we take it to the collection point. Locally, which is a lady in Belfields who had to build a second shed because she gets so much of other people's rubbish. So we're like, well, we can help here. We can use a lot of our space. So our whole changing rooms, because it was an old new look, all our changing rooms are just full of TerraCycle rubbish, basically. And then obviously things like people coming through the door, we've got a counter on the door. So this is the tricky part, right? So engagement is sort of easy to measure, but only on a very basic level, because we can count the number of people coming through the door, although you can stand in front of the counter and jump back and forward if you want to skew the measurements. So we haven't quite figured out how it translates to the number of people who are actually visiting per day, but that was set up by the air pollution department at the uni, which is a bit of a world leading research lab. We're really lucky with Guildford. We've got Uni of Surrey, so they've got like Tim Jackson at CUSP, Centre for Understanding Sustainable Prosperity. They've got the Air Pollution Centre. They're building a sustainability hive up there. So we do a lot with them, and I'll come back and remind me, we'll come back onto the uni in a moment. But the air pollution guys set up the counter of people coming in so that they could monitor indoor air quality and compare it to the number of people coming in. So we didn't even have to do that, which was great. That counts the number of people coming into the building. But then obviously the really difficult part is how you measure anything that happens when the people leave the building again, because we can obviously look at people, our sign-ups to our mailing list, our social media interaction, that side of things. But we haven't got a clear way of figuring out when people leave, what impact has this place had on them? How many people are coming back and actually getting involved in stuff? How many people are converting into volunteers that have been directly involved, like as a direct result of coming in here? And most importantly, what are they actually doing to have an impact in their own lives? And especially, what's the communication like when they go away? Because obviously there's a much bigger factor than just people leaving here and turning off a light bulb or whatever, right? The point is to go away and chat about it and say, well, this space has just opened up, go down, have a look, see what these guys are doing, because that can actually have a way bigger, contagious behavior effect than us each doing our own individual thing. The point of those individual things is to help build that collaborative action, basically, to have a wider impact. I don't know how we start going about measuring that, to be perfectly honest. One thing that we're going to try and do as a starting point is we've got voting members within our constitution, so we have about 130 people who have taken a pledge to support our aims, basically, which gives them voting rights at our AGMs and things like that. So they're quite a committed bunch. So we figured what we would do is do an anonymous questionnaire within them to start with, to see where they're at now, like what their own footprint is right now, who they bank with, what their energy supplier is, and then do it again in 3 months and then in 6 months and see what changes our own very small group has made. that's obviously not representative of the community at wide, because it's all people who are quite engaged in this anyway. So it's all the people who are really sort of leading by example anyway. But we're hoping that piloting something like that might give us a bit of an idea of how we look at what impact the building is having as to your normal person on the street coming in and then leaving again, and how we can develop some sort of monitoring of that. And if anybody has any suggestions on that, then we'd be all ears, because it's a really tricky one to figure out.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Wow. Chantal asks, what kind of events are you running in the evenings? And if I could just add like a sort of supplementary question on that, which is, to what extent, I mean, you're called Zero Carbon Guildford, so that may answer this, but to what extent do you engage with the kind of emotional, psychological, spiritual aspects of people coming on this journey?
Yeah, so the point of the whole space has got like a three sort of tiered strategy. So it's obviously mainly focused on education and engagement. But whenever we talk, like when we do little intros at the start of all events, and whenever we do it, we mention that we've got this sort of three-pronged approach, because what we usually use is this fact that, you know, these polls say 85% of the British public are concerned about climate change, 52% are very concerned, but the gulf to the number of people actually acting appropriately to that is absolutely massive, and that we think that there's two main blockers to that. And number one is confusion. It's really difficult to know how to start doing some of this, and there's so much misinformation, disinformation out there. People just turn off because it's an absolute minefield. You just don't know what the right thing to do is. So part of it's presenting solutions, really easy, implementable, and ideally local solutions that are not just easy for people to get out and do, but ideally without having to drive, but actually help build self-sufficiency and resilience within a local economy, so that, you know, as the planet changes, we can cut, you know, transport emissions, which is by far Surrey's biggest. 46% of our emissions are transport, so cut food miles, all of that side of things, but also build some resilience for food shortages, energy crises, that sort of thing. And the third part of it is mental health and wellbeing support, because it's so overwhelming to think about a lot of this that people just turn away and think someone else is so I can't deal with it, someone else will have to do this. Unfortunately, that is by far the least engaged in part of everything we do. So we've got a wellbeing team. And again, this is something that we'd be like all ears for ideas and help with, really. We've got a wellbeing team. They're on a break at the moment for Easter, but they run regular Friday morning drop-in sessions here, looking at things like mindfulness, tapping. They do forest bathing. They do lots of different things. They do the stuff around Joanna Macy's work. It doesn't get great engagement. We also had, to tie this back into events, we've got CES, the Centre for Environment and Sustainability, up on campus. Go on, Ruth.
I was just going to say, in terms of that sort of the spiritual, the looking after yourself emotionally and how to deal with that, we did have somebody from the Climate Cafe group come and talk, and there's a video of it on the YouTube channel. And that sort of Climate Cafe idea of how to hold a space where people can come and talk about things is really a welcoming and open space. It's a useful sort of thing to use.
Yeah.
But I think the tricky part of it is, it's not necessarily what happens when people are in here. It's getting them into that. And I don't know if it's like stiff British upper lip or what have you, people just not wanting to talk about their feelings or anything. Like it's really difficult to get people to like buy into it in the first place. Just getting them through the door is quite tricky.
One other thing as well, I don't know, so because of my work, I do trauma stuff, because I'm looking at childhood things, and there's loads of really useful research in the neuropsych field around trauma and how people engage with traumatic things, and the climate crisis is like the biggest trauma you can come across, really. And one of the key things that they message around how to get people to engage and process it is to be together and to have fun. So if you can get people together in a joyful, enjoying each other and being in a happy kind of space, that's when people start to kind of come out of that trauma experience and move into solutions and creativity and things like that. So it's very much the CEC was running fun experiences and fun events and things like that, draws people in so that they're in a good space, and then you can sort of talk to them about things in a way that's not gonna
Yeah.
think.
We're probably the other way round to you in that I suspect our sort of strongest arm is the psychological, emotional piece, just because of our backgrounds in the core team. So, but no, that's really interesting. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say, I think that's another advantage of having this sort of space, is that it's much easier to show the sort of like enjoyable side of some of this, because obviously if you're just out on the street shoving a flyer in someone's face going, do you care about climate change, is and like trying to get a lot of information across quickly. Number one, it's not very enjoyable to talk about. Like, obviously we all have lots of pretty negative emotions, so you never really convey the point, oh, I'm enjoying myself doing this. But when you've got this space and you can show people actually having a pretty good time dealing with a lot of this stuff, it's a lot easier to help people identify that and make people want to feel part of something that is actually enjoyable. So yeah, it's definitely another good bonus.
Yeah, thank you.
And then on types of events, we had what I was going to say was we had Natasha Parker, who does a lot of the wellbeing stuff up at CES, come and do an event, and that only got 6 people. No, that got, I think, 10 people online, so that wasn't great attended. But we've had the global head of sustainable investment at London Stock Exchange come and talk about where to put your money, move it out of pensions, put it into community energy, things like that. We've had Tim Jackson from Cusp was our first event. We do climate cinema. We've just started doing open mic nights. We've got a climate focused art exhibition up there. So we try and have a real range of events to reach out past that. That's what we're trying to do. That's what the space is here for. Bring in all parts of the community, not just the ones, try and get away from preaching to the choir, which I'm not pretending we've done yet. But I think we are making some small progress on it.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. I'm going to go to Marilla, if you want to unmute yourself, Marilla.
Hi, Ben.
Hi.
I'm very, very impressed. I'm sorry I can't turn my camera on because I don't have a camera today. But I'm really impressed at what you've done. I didn't really know anything about CECs prior to today. I'm doing a master's in sustainability, and I live in Hertfordshire. And we're actually sort of studying social enterprises, and we've got a group assignment at the moment about social enterprises. And so I've got quite a few questions because we're looking at sort of similar community engagement things as part of the course, and in general it is an interest of mine. So do all CECs, is that the business model that the council have to give them premises, did you say?
No.
Shall I answer?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, I've talked a lot, so yeah, go for it.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking because there's different. So initially there was this business rates model which Ben and the Zero Carbon Guildford team use, which is if you set up as a not-for-profit entity, then you can save the building owner business rates up to 100% of business rates through the council, and that means that you then get so you can sort of then get a lease from the building owner where they're giving you the building because you're essentially saving them thousands and thousands of pounds by letting you use the building. So that's the business rates model. And there's a few CECs that have used that. Ben's is one of them. But actually, what we found as the project got going is that councils love this because a lot of them have declared a climate emergency and they got no resources. There's been, we've had everything cutbacks all over the place, and they've got austerity and all of those sorts of things, and they've got like one person sitting in their council trying to solve the climate crisis. So when they see communities going, oh, we want to get together and have a space, so they're really doing whatever they can to support. And so we've had a few teams that are set up where they've been given a space by the council. So that's happened, and then there's been a couple of other places. Sometimes that people set up and they initially share a space with another organisation, and it gets them started and gets some visibility, and they can get a bit stronger and then move on. Others have been given a building by somebody who just owns a building, who's interested in the climate and wants something happening in their local area. So if you've got a rich person with a building, so there are different. So we've found that there are different ways to go about getting buildings. But the initial thing of having a group, a kind of diverse group of people that are coming together and going, okay, we want to do something about this, and having a kind of clear plan and structure about what it is that you want to do, you'll find that there will be opportunities to access buildings that come from that, and you just got to be open to that.
Do you think that a community interest company could benefit in a similar way?
Yeah, so most of the teams are setting up as either a CIO or a CIC.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Marilla, I'm happy to give you Ruth's email address, but I just want to make sure that other people get a chance to ask questions as well, if that's all right.
Yeah. Could I just ask one more question, which is kind of the demographics of the volunteers and the public who come in? You know, is it people who are already engaged in these issues, or do you think there's actually new people getting engaged in climate and environmental issues as a result of this? And are you reaching sort of all social and financial demographics of people, or is it mainly people who've actually got the money to you know, be able to not work and they're full-time and therefore they can volunteer, and people who have, you know, people who actually are in fuel poverty, or is it people who have the money to invest in solar panels and things like that?
Yeah, it's a good mix. It's so in answer to your previous question about CICs, if you go on the blog that I linked, you can get more information about that. We've got a real town centre spot, so we get a lot of foot traffic. I would say that the difficult part obviously is engaging areas, lower income areas with accessibility issues out in the town. So we've got funding bid in to get an electric van and some cargo bikes so we can take some projects out to them. But because we're in the town centre, it massively ramps up the people getting involved. Yeah, great.
Well, thank you for your answers.
Thank you so much, Marilla. Okay, who else has a question for either Ruth or Ben? We've just got 10 more minutes.
Ruth, do you have any view on, we're trying to, although we've sort of been discussing this recently, we're supposedly representing Hertfordshire. If we're thinking about are there any particular criteria that you've highlighted should be kind of like a tick list of when you're thinking about the area to put your CEC, you know, because obviously ideally we'd love to have one in St Albans and Hertford and Hatfield and but if we wanted to start somewhere, is there anything you think, Ruth, that we should be thinking about in particular in terms of choosing a location?
Most places, most teams want something really city centre. The main thing is that engagement with people and that visibility. So being right in the middle, and like the Zero in Guildford is right in the middle of the shopping area. So you get a lot of footfall, which is what most people do. But I would say that it is very, very much, you need to look at what's going on in your local community. Where is engagement or not engagement? Who needs to, you know, what's going on? What are the needs? So we had one team that was over, and I think they were in Wales, but there was quite a lot of poverty in that area, and they were really keen to have somewhere that maybe a bit further out but was bigger and had a lot of outside space to grow food and things like that, because they had a lot of food bank use, which is not healthy food, it's canned, you know, and they wanted to have, so they sort of moved what they wanted according to what the needs of the local community are. So I think the outreach is so important, and in Ben's blog he really points out the importance of that, because they didn't get the building for a while. It meant that he put a lot of work into that network building and outreach work and getting a really strong team, and I think that was actually to his benefit in the end. Really sort of starting to connect with groups that you wouldn't normally connect to. How do we, you know, and talking about it in terms of community resilience. So whole, you know, social as well as environmental, sort of how are we all going to look after each other and sort of get that, and that will then help to kind of really coalesce and get that clear vision of what our community needs, and going through that visioning process with that bigger group.
Great, thank you, Chantal.
And you don't really want people driving to come and see you, obviously, is important reason for that as well. Yeah, thank you. Okay, probably just time for one or two more questions.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Where's next for you guys? What's your plans for the next couple of years?
For us, it's hold on to the building. And I suppose have some, so we got 2 years, as I said, but with break clauses. So we would be gutted, but it's always the risk that, you know, you're going to have to take. We are about to put our national lottery funding to use. So vamping up some of the displays. So they're all divided into areas, right? So we have biodiversity behind me, the green your home, reducing our impact is where the community fridge, the jump is, change the system is where activism corner is. So we're about to start a library of things as well. We've been working with Guildford Library because they have one, but they're on the 3rd floor in limited space. So we're trying to help them expand. We're about to launch a sustainable business network in partnership with the University of Surrey. So that's part of the charity rather than part of Zero. So we didn't think about the difficulty of the confusion, right? When we named a charity Zero Carbon Guildford and then the building Zero. Turns out that was a bad idea in retrospect because no one ever gets it right. So the council has now started calling us net carbon, which doesn't even make sense. So yeah, naming is something to think about. It took us ages, and we still ended up with that issue. So we're really excited about the business network because 25 to 30% of the borough's emissions is through that. So this comes back to the teaming up with the uni, right? Universities get HIFE funding or NEIC funding or what have you. They have to show that their research is making an impact in the community. So if you can open a space, this is the perfect recipe for them. And actually, Uni of Surrey had been trying to get a space open in the town centre for about 3 years, couldn't do it. And then we came along with no money and no paid employees and did it. So they were like, well, you're obviously doing something right. So they've been really good at backing us with projects and talks and things like that. And now we're launching this with them. It looks like we'll be getting a full-time employee to focus on business engagement for the next 2 years on a temporary contract. And the great thing is because it's the uni and they're really good with their sort of environmental credentials. And they, as I say, I think I said before, they're launching a sustainability hive. The whole business network doesn't have the word growth in it anywhere. That's like, we're really trying to move away from what's typically been the issue of where we've got to. And so it's focused on 3 things. Platforming what businesses are already doing. So shoe, for example, the shoe company gives £5 back when you take a pair of shoes back to them, and they recycle them properly, which is quite good because the UK has terrible textile recycling facilities. But I mean, that is just an example. Is more to say, if we can start showing people who's doing stuff, then it forces other companies to take on more sustainability initiatives and not just gimmicky things like have £5 back, but actually properly looking at their business models. And most of the research, so the Uni of Surrey did a year's worth of research on this, and most SMEs came back saying, we really want to do stuff, we just don't know where to start. So it comes back to these solutions, which is the second part of it, providing a really clear pathway that businesses can employ to cut emissions and improve sustainability. And the third part being how we can make the towns around here more attractive to startups and social enterprises that are focused on sustainability. So things like cutting business rates for what you might call green companies or what have you. So we should get a bit of funding for the next 4 months before the next round comes up that's just surplus left over to launch a bit of a pilot baseline. And then from August, we're starting this 2-year contract, hopefully. So yeah, we're really excited about that. We think that's going to make, hopefully, a really big difference. And business is like a really tricky part to bring into something like this because their immediate suspicion is, well, you're trying to ruin our business or what have you. So I think teaming up with a uni and and a respectable partner can help build some of that momentum.
Can I just ask something?
Chantal, I just want to make sure Ellen gets a chance to ask.
Okay.
You don't. Okay.
Yeah, if that's okay. Ellen, thank you.
Everyone. I just wanted to, it's not really a question, I just wanted to say it looks absolutely fantastic. I know some of you, but the people I don't know, I'm actually from Three Rivers Council, so one of the few people trying to make it happen with very little funds. Thankfully, lots of our members are coming on board, so if there's some fantastic people like yourselves that would like to do this kind of thing in our district, or even in Hertfordshire anywhere, anything we can do to support it, we will do our best. So really looking forward to seeing what comes.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ellen, and thank you so much for coming. And Ruth, did you just want to say something about what next? And then Chantal, have we got time for yours?
Yeah, I think from the perspective of the sort of whole network, you know, we've gone this initial sort of startup thing and a lot of effort. You know, initially it was Phoenix and I, and then, you know, when we've now got a team, and it's been very sort of that sort of team folks getting the information out, and now it's that there's a shift now towards, we've got a number of buildings up and running. And it's about kind of really reinforcing that network kind of sharing, because we've got enough experience and confidence and skills and knowledge in that network as a whole. It's about building that kind of that's what the next step is, and also to start to move beyond the UK as well. So we have been in contact with a project in Germany. We've spoken to an event in Poland. There's also another team in the US who are looking at something similar. So there's like looking at how does this, because this is, somebody said it's local but scalable. And that's the thing, is it can grow as big as it needs to. It's just about linking people up so that we can share those solutions to start building a future that we need. And that needs to happen on a global scale ultimately. So who else is doing that across the world, and how do we start linking up?
Fantastic, brilliant. Chantal, you want to come in real quick?
Yeah, it's just thinking about this idea of volunteering, and if we were doing this in Hertfordshire, and well, we want to be doing this in Hertfordshire, and I just asked Ben, is this you're doing this? Sounds like you're doing this full time. Well, and Ruth said you've got a job and you work in child protection. So for you, Ben, have you got a day job, and then you're doing this, or how do you pay your bills?
It's a very good question. I was supposed to. I didn't do it for about a year because Zero got quite out of control. So we basically, there's two things. There's the getting it off the ground part, because the lease negotiation turned into a real headache. My other half was working and I was self-employed, so I could sort of do whatever, and this really ended up taking over, which was fine. But then my other half had to stop work for personal reasons, because our eldest couldn't go to school, which then meant neither of us were working. But I also was at a point where I couldn't really stop doing this place. So we're refurbing our house, so we now have no cash left to refurb our house, which is a bit of a pain, but what can you do? And I've just gone back to work, actually. So I'm now taking the role of Senior Climate Officer on the Greener Futures team at Surrey County Council, with the Community Climate Action Lead. So part of my job is to support Zero and the other projects in Surrey. So I just started 2 weeks ago. So that was pretty convenient. It was the best way I could get back to work and actually still keep pushing this forward. But we also had Mark, who I showed you before. He is pretty much in here full time as a volunteer, because he had he worked in IT and wanted a career change. So he stopped working and basically helps keep us open the whole time. Kaz was on a career break, so she volunteers here 3 days a week. So it is really difficult to find people that you can actually, number one, get off the ground with, putting a lot of effort in. But there seems like quite a few of you who are committed here, so that's good news. And number two, to keep the place open. So the volunteer support network is definitely a good place to go for volunteers. Putting signs up in your window as soon as you get a space saying this is what we're trying to do, and start networking now. Start figuring out who you can do, because if everybody can do, say, 1 day a week, if they have flexible working at their jobs and can do 1 day a week, you're already off to a bit of a winner, basically.
Yeah, and presumably if you've got charity status, that also puts you in a position to be able to bid for, potentially quite chunky funding if it's available, and then that could help to at least fund volunteers who are wanting to put in a lot of time.
Definitely, yes. So way easier than with a CIC. The tricky part is that not many grant makers want to fund running costs, because you don't get a glamorous photo out of it. So I think one thing that would be good, the lady from the council, was it Ella? Has she gone? The ways that they could support that are non-financially would be to help write policies, to help look at funding bids, to help people get set up as charities or what have you. That's what I think councils can be doing. Easier to do it as a CIO, but there aren't that many available. National Lottery is one that does give running costs, so that would be good. They are available because Staines, Talking Tree and Staines, which does similar to us, but it's more of a cafe, they've got 2 paid employees already, and they've got a grant for a third one. So it is definitely doable. It's not something we've had to do yet. But we consulted with the people who opened. We know the woman who opened Herne Hill Community Centre above the train station there. She moved to Guildford, and she said with all the community projects they've really struggled. She'd been involved in. They'd really struggled to keep it open without a paid member of staff. So we've managed that so far, but it is definitely a consideration to think before you open and then realise, oh, you can't keep it open all the time. How long are you going to stay open for? And there's a place in Godalming which is called What Next, actually. they already had a space, but they now only open for events. So obviously the downside of that is that you're not getting any footfall, other than it's difficult to reach past the usual suspects with that, because you're only getting the people who are coming to the events. And same with opening in a shopping centre. When we talked about ideal spaces, if you go in a shopping centre, there's a good chance that you might have to close at 5 or 6, which means you can't do evening events, which get the most attended. So that's also something to think about when you look for vacant spaces.
Great. I'm so conscious of your generosity of time, and want to thank you so much, Ruth and Ben and everybody else that came. This has been so informative and so inspiring. Absolutely excellent. Thank you. Yeah, we'll be in touch, and we will put this recording up on our usual channels for other people to see as well. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks for having us. Lovely to meet you all.
You're welcome. Thanks.
What happens in Hertfordshire.
Yeah, keep us posted.
To help. Yep. Let us know how you